The Necklace by Guy de Maupassant. La Parure, 1884. Mathilde Loisel was a pretty young woman born into a family of clerks. She had no dowry, no connections, no way of meeting a wealthy man who might fall in love with her. So she married a minor government clerk, a kind and simple man who worked at the Ministry of Education. She suffered deeply, not from hunger or want, but from the feeling that she deserved more. Her small apartment, with its worn chairs and plain curtains, seemed unbearable to her. She dreamed of silent rooms hung with silk, of bronze candle holders, of polished tables where elegant people dined. She had no fine dresses, no jewels, nothing. And yet, she wanted nothing else. She felt made for beauty and for luxury. She had one rich friend, a woman she had known at school, Madame Forestier. But Mathilde rarely visited her, because coming home from those visits left her feeling sick with longing. One evening, her husband came home holding an envelope with a pleased look on his face. "Here," he said, "I have something for you." She tore it open. Inside was an invitation printed on fine card. The Minister of Education and Madame Georges Ramponneau requested the pleasure of Monsieur and Madame Loisel's company at an evening reception at the ministry. Instead of the delight her husband had expected, she threw the invitation onto the table with a look of annoyance. "What do you want me to do with this?" "But, my dear, I thought you'd be happy. You never go out, and this is a real occasion. I had to work to get that invitation. And what am I supposed to wear?" He had not thought of that. He stammered, "What about the dress you wear to the theater? That looks lovely." She shook her head, close to tears. "No, there is nothing more humiliating than to look poor among women who are rich." Her husband asked quietly, "How much would a proper dress cost?" She thought for a moment. "About 400 francs. He went pale. He had exactly that amount saved for a hunting rifle he had planned to buy with friends. He said nothing about the rifle. "All right," he said, 400 francs. The dress was made, but as the evening grew near, Madame Loisel seemed distant and unhappy. "What is it?" her husband asked. "You've been strange for 3 days." "I have no jewels," she said, "not a single stone to wear. I'll look shabby beside everyone there." "Wear fresh flowers," he suggested. "They're very fashionable this time of year." "No," she said. "Nothing is more humiliating than to look poor among rich women." Then she had a thought. "Go see my friend Madame Forestier and ask if she'll lend me some jewelry." The next day she went herself. Madame Forestier opened her jewel box and told Mathilde to choose whatever she liked. There were pearls, a gold bracelet, a Venetian cross set with gems. Mathilde tried on rings, bracelets, earrings, hesitating, unable to decide. Then at the bottom of the case she discovered a superb necklace, a string of diamonds set in black satin. Her hands shook slightly as she fastened it at her throat. "Can I borrow this one?" she asked. "Yes, of course," said Madame Forestier. Mathilde embraced her and left with the necklace. The evening of the reception arrived. Madame Loisel was a triumph. She was the prettiest woman there, graceful, smiling, full of joy. All the men looked at her. The ministry officials wanted to dance with her. Even the minister himself noticed her. She danced until 4 in the morning, caught up entirely in the pleasure of the night. When she and her husband left, it was cold and dark outside. There were no carriages to be found. They walked in silence until they found a cab near the river. Back in their small apartment, Mathilde stood before the mirror for one last look at herself in her evening glory. And then she cried out. The necklace was gone. Her husband searched his coat, her wrap, his pockets. Nothing. He went back to the reception hall in a cab to ask if it had been found. Nothing. He walked the streets they had taken, retracing every step. Nothing. "You must write to Madame Forestier," he said, "and tell her the clasp broke and you've sent it to be repaired. That will buy us time." They spent a week searching, checking cab offices, placing notices in newspapers. But the necklace did not come back. At the end of the week, Loisel said, "We have to think about replacing it." They went from jeweler to jeweler. At last, they found a diamond necklace that seemed almost identical to the one they had borrowed. The price was 36,000 francs. The clerk had 18,000 francs that his father had left him. He borrowed the rest, a few thousand here, a few thousand there, from moneylenders, from men who charged heavy interest, from all kinds of sources. He signed his name to ruinous terms. He committed the rest of his life to debt. When Madame Loisel returned the necklace, Madame Forestier said coolly, "You should have brought it back sooner. I might have needed it." She did not open the case. Mathilde breathed again. Then the hard years began. Madame Loisel let go of the maid, gave up the apartment, and moved to an attic room under the roof. She learned the heavy work of a household, washing dishes, hauling water up the stairs, taking out the rubbish. She washed laundry by hand and hung it to dry on a line. Every morning she went to the market, haggling for every sou. Her husband worked evenings as a copyist, and on weekends he did accounts for a tradesman. This life lasted 10 years. At the end of 10 years, the debt was paid, every centime of it, with interest. Madame Loisel looked old now. She had become the strong, hard woman of poor households, her hair rough, her skirts askew, her hands red and raw. She spoke too loudly and scrubbed floors herself. But sometimes, when her husband was at work, she would sit by the window and think back to that night at the ministry, the dancing, the music, the men who had admired her. One Sunday she went for a walk in the Champs-Élysées to rest from the week's work. She saw a woman with a child, still young, still lovely, still charming. It was Madame Forestier. Mathilde hesitated. Should she speak? Yes. She had paid everything. She would say so. She went up. "Good morning, Jeanne." The other woman did not recognize her. "I'm sorry. Who are you?" "I'm Mathilde Loisel." Madame Forestier looked shocked. "Mathilde? But you look so different. What happened to you?" "Hard times," Mathilde said, "and all because of you." "Because of me? What do you mean?" "Do you remember that diamond necklace you lent me for the reception at the ministry?" "Yes, I remember it. What about it?" "I lost it." "But you gave it back to me." "I gave you another, exactly like it, and paying for that has taken us 10 years. You understand now why we look the way we do, why it wasn't easy." She gave a small, sad smile. "But it's done at last, and I'm glad." Madame Forestier stopped walking and took Mathilde's hands in hers, full of emotion. "Oh, my poor Mathilde," she said. "My necklace was paste. It was worth at most 500 francs.